Good morning. We are going to do Chapter 3a, Day 10, Solving with Decimals. And we're going to review some of the basics of decimals just so that we have those foremost in mind when solving equations with decimals. So Roman numeral 1, how to round a decimal. Okay, here's your basic steps. Number 1, you go 1 decimal place beyond what you want. 1 decimal place beyond what you want. And then when you're in that decimal place, if that number is 5 or higher, you round up. If it is 4 or lower, it rounds to stay the same. Remember that rounding is not just rounding up, it's rounding to stay the same or rounding up. Both of those are rounding. So for example, let's say you've got 2.3555 and you're supposed to round to hundredths. And for what we do, honestly, it's never going to get past hundredths. But just to remind you what your decimal places are, the first decimal place to the right is the tenths. And then the next one is the hundredths. And then the third decimal place to the right is the thousandths. And then it goes 10,000s and some higher numbers. But you don't need to know that because you're either going to be rounding to the hundredths or rounding to the tenths on your homework. So 2.3555. So first thing you want to do is identify where hundredths are. Hundredths are here. So in the end, that will be the last decimal place that you go to. So we move 1 to the right, which is here. And we use that one to decide what to do with the digit in the hundredths place. Now, since this number is 5 or higher, we're going to round the hundredths place up 1. So that will give us 2.36. That will be our rounded number. By the way, when you round, your equal signs can turn wavy at the end, which tells the reader, hey, I actually rounded that number. All right, let's do another example. Let's say that we're going to round the number 15.97 to the tenths. All right, so the tenths place is the 9. So you go 1 to the right, that would be 7, which tells we need to round that 9 up. Now, if you round a 9 up, you get a 10. So what you have to do is carry the 1 from the 10 over, so it becomes 16. And then the 0 of the 10 holds the place. So this would actually be 16.0. And yes, the 0 would be there because it tells the person reading it that it was rounded. It wasn't a perfect 16. It was actually rounded. Okay, so Roman numeral 2, we're going to do some basic decimal operations. Just the ones that you need to be able to solve. Okay, so I'm just going to put a set of examples here. Let's say you've got 1.6 plus 0.03. So if you're adding or subtracting, you line up the decimals. So I'm going to put 1.6, and then the decimal for the 0.03 goes directly below it. Fill in the 0.3. We are adding, draw a line. Now, since there's nothing above the 3, you can put a placeholder 0, and then the decimal just carries straight down. So now you just add like you would normally. 3 plus 0 is 3, 6 plus 0 is 6, 1 plus nothing is 1, and that would be your answer is 1.63. So when you're adding and subtracting, line the decimals up. Okay, example 2. Let's multiply Let's multiply 1.5 times negative 0.4. So the easiest way to multiply is you multiply without the decimals first. That gives you a number. Then you count original decimal places. And then you move the decimal left that number, whatever the decimal places are. You may have to fill in zeros. Okay, so let's do this. We're going to go 15 times negative 4 equals negative 60. Okay, so we multiplied without the decimal. Now we count the decimal places. There was one for the 0.5 and one for the 0.4, which means we had 2 decimal places. So we're going to take the 60 and we're going to move the decimal 1, 2 places. So my answer is negative 0.6. All right, let's do another one of these multiplication ones. So example 3, 1.2 times 0.03. Okay, so first multiply the numbers just without the decimals. So 12 times 3 equals 36. Now count the decimal places. I have 1, 2, 3 decimal places. So I'm going to move my decimal 1, 2, and then I'm out of spaces, so I'm going to need to fill with a 0 to move it over 3 spaces. So my answer is 0.036. So sometimes you have to fill with zeros if you run out of digits. Okay, example 4. We're going to do some division. We're going to go 1.56 divided by 0.7. So if you remember doing division from grade school, this is the same thing as 1.6 divided by 0.7. And the problem is that the bottom number needs to have no decimal places. It's okay if the top has decimal places, but the bottom can't have any decimal places. So the way you get rid of it is you just multiply by 10 over 10 until there's no more decimal. So when you multiply by 10, the decimal moves 1 to the right. So 15.6, because it moves 1 to the right, and then this one moves 1 to the right, and we get a 7. The minute your bottom number has no decimal places, you are ready to do division. So the 7 goes on the outside, the 15.6 goes on the inside. The decimal carries straight up the bar, above the division bar. So it just goes straight up from there. Erase my scritchy marks, but my whiteout is dead. Okay, so now we divide. 7 goes into 15 2 times. 2 times 7 is 14. Subtract, you get 1. Bring down the 6. 7 goes into 16 2 times. Notice the decimal is already on the line. 2 times 7 is 14. Now, we started with 2 decimal places. So in general, there's lots of rules for this, but in general, if you start with 2 decimal places, you need to end with 2 decimal places. So what we're going to need to go is 3 decimal places and round to 2 places. All right, so I'm going to add a 0 and bring it down because we need more digits. 7 goes into 20 2 times. 2 times 7 is 14. That's 6, add a 0. 7 goes into 60 8 times. Okay, so we have 3 decimal places. The 8 will round the 2 up to a 3, and we get 2.23 as our rounded answer. Again, there's lots of rules for decimal places and significant figures. You'll cover those probably in your science class, but this is a general rule of thumb. Same number of decimals as you start with. Okay, so Roman numeral 3, solving. And in particular, I'm going to show you how to clear the decimals. If the decimals are simple, don't clear them, just do the decimals as is. But if they are a lot of decimals, definitely clear them. So here we go, 2.3x plus 3 equals 2 times the quantity, 1.6x minus 0.03. Okay, so first thing you need to do, just like when you clear fractions, is you got to get rid of the parentheses. So first thing you're going to do is distribute. So we're going to distribute the 2. And remember the rules that we just learned. 2 times 16 is 32x. 1 decimal place on the 16, 1 on the 32. Positive times a negative is a negative. 2 times 3 is 6. There are 2 decimal places, so we're going to go in 1, 2. We got to add a 0. All right, so 2.3x plus 3, just bring that down. Okay, so the way you clear decimals is you multiply both sides of the equation by 10 until there's no more decimal. Every time you multiply a number by 10, the decimal moves 1/10 place to the right. So 2.3, the decimal moves. I now have 23x plus 10 times 3 is 30. 10 times 3.2, the decimal moves. I have 32x. 10 times 0.06 is 0.6. Now, you can get rid of the 0.6, but if you multiply by 10s again, you're going to get super large numbers. So you get to choose if you're ready to multiply again by 10 or just go with it. I'm just going to go with it. So I'm going to subtract 32x over to the left. 23 minus 32 is negative 9x. Plus 30 equals negative 0.6. Now I'm going to subtract 30 to the right. So negative 9x equals, and since if you line the invisible decimal up, this is negative 30.6. Now I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal, so put those over their ones. 1 over negative 9. X equals, it's going to be a positive number. It's 30.6 over 9. So really quick, coming over here, 9 into 30.6. 9 goes into 30 3 times, that's 27. 9 goes into 36 4 times. Remember, the decimal just comes straight up. So my answer is 3.4. So that's how you clear decimals. Get rid of parentheses, multiply both sides by 10. You can do multiply by 10s again if you want to get rid of absolutely every decimal, and then solve normally. Any questions?